So everyone's in. Can everyone wave? Okay, great. Now I know I'm being heard. Thank you, everyone. My name is Alex Nguyen. I'm the city manager. Thank you for all of you. I think there are many more than I can see here on my screen, but thank you to all of you for taking your time to join us tonight in this effort that we've named ReNew Oxnard. So this is essentially an effort that we're embarking on to see if we can find solutions to modernize the LMDs throughout our city, and not all of them, but some of them. So I think everyone is aware and understands the struggles that the city and the LMDs have had over prior years, and I know there's been in prior years a lot of frustration about how some of them have been managed, frustration about how the actual finances have been managed by the city, and of course, frustration about varying levels of services over time. So the city's gone through, and I know this occurred before I arrived here 2.5 years ago. The city's gone through efforts to straighten out the books, improve the management practices, to be more accountable and more transparent to the various neighborhoods. But even with that, and some of these LMDs go back, I understand, to the 1980s. And and again, I think I'm repeating things that you've already heard, but one of the main obstacles we have with some of these the way these things were created is obviously back in the 1980s, they didn't at the time anticipate certain things that would happen in legislation and new California rules and laws that would prevent increasing the amounts each year to meet the increase in the cost of labor, the cost of fuel, the cost of supplies, and so on. So it just leads to the situation where many of our LMDs are basically capped out in terms of what the budget is each year. And of course, it can't keep up with the way that the cost in labor and fuel and equipment has risen over the decades. So the goal of this process is essentially to figure out what solutions are possible to modernize these LMDs, and there's not going to be, my understanding is, it's unlikely that there will be a one-size-fits-all solution for every neighborhood that has an LMD across the city. There may be different solutions for different areas. So again, I ask, thank you for taking the time to join us, but I also ask for your patience, and so that our consultants and the staff can get through the presentations and then engage in a discussion and answer as many questions as we can. Also, this is just a beginning point. We're probably, actually, I'm pretty certain, Pablo, nod for me, we're not making any decisions tonight, right?
Correct.
Right, okay. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Pablo Perez from NBS. Many of you know him, and we'll continue. And by the way, I'm committed to staying on here tonight to listen. So Pablo, take it away.
Very good. Well, thank you, Alex. I will do my best. I'm also monitoring the waiting room, and some people have come in. Welcome. Currently, we have 57 participants, and that's very good to see. Very happy to see high participation numbers. As Alex stated, my name is Pablo Perez. I've been working with the City of Oxnard and the Maintenance Assessment Districts for quite some time now, for the past 6 years at least. I have actually met many of you in person at council meetings, community meetings, and I have learned that Oxnard residents care very much about the city. I also learned that some of you have some serious baking skills. So I look forward to COVID being over so I can meet with you in person and eat some of those delicious brownies. Can't remember the name of the person, but she always had brownies and it was really good. So I can't wait for that. I'd also like to take a moment before I cover the topics that I'm going to have on the screen here soon. Apologize for that. Just go through here. Can't find it now. Well, my topics, to kind of put you at ease about what this meeting is about and it's not, so you can enjoy the meeting that much more. I just want you to know that the ReNew Oxnard program is not about raising your property taxes, okay? To be frank, these days, a city in California is frankly not able to raise anybody's property taxes. Those days are long over. When I started in the industry in 1992, that was possible, but really no longer. I'm gonna, if you have a pen and paper, you can write this down. Propositions 13, 218, and 26 have really, really limited the ability of a city to raise your property taxes. A property owner or a registered voter is now required, okay? So in addition to that, there are many steps required, including canceled meetings, a public hearing, a notice, tabulation of ballots, and most importantly, remember that a ballot and a vote is required. So the city simply just can't raise your property taxes. Also, there's no such thing as an automatic conversion of an assessment district into another district, including a community facilities district or any other type of district. So if you're in an assessment district now, the city cannot convert that into something else without your vote, and therefore they cannot increase the rate either. The steps that I described previously all apply and are required. Please know that the purpose of this and the coming meetings, again, is not to raise your property taxes, and there are no predetermined solutions. We actually don't have a predetermined solution in mind as we engage each of your communities individually. We collectively together, there will be many meetings, will determine what the best solution is for your community. And I have told the city that we're not gonna put forward any solution if there's not sufficient support in that community. So first objective is to increase the level of participation, get as many of you to participate in the meeting so that we can collectively find solutions that we can put forth and work with the city to implement, okay? With that said, I'm going to pass it on to Danielle, who's gonna have some rules for the meeting and describe some of the procedures before I come back to you. Go ahead, Danielle.
Okay, thank you. I think you're going to hear some of the same ideas repeated tonight because it's really important that we talk about what this program means. So I'm glad to see so many of you. You know, there's a number of you on video, which is nice to see a mix here, and some of you on the phone. I like to see also that there's so many of you dedicated to your communities. So one of the main priorities of this city effort is to get as many of you as possible to participate. So high participation for us looks like a win. The city hired CivicMic, which is a service of NBS to assist with public engagement efforts for your community. Our main focus is to help communities, governments, organizations work collaboratively to create and realize sustainable visions for communities' futures. We've talked with many of you on the phone and through social media and email, Pablo and I both. We've sent out multiple flyers encouraging you to sign up on CivicMic.com. Next slide there, Pablo.
Sorry.
There's over 300 community members already signed up for information. So hopefully you've seen one of these flyers and you are one of those 300 that is signed up. If not, I'd like you to visit CivicMic.com. That's CivicMic.com/Oxnard for those of you on the phone, if you don't have your video up. You can visit the website there and then scroll down to the bottom of the page. And at the bottom of the page, it asks for your email address, your name, what district you're in. And if you don't know, you can just select other there. But this is the best way for us to get information to you and for us to gather information back from you. Also, for those of you on the call, if you want to use a different method, we have a texting program where you can very easily text the word Oxnard to number 33777. So this will sign you up the same way as on the web page, and then you can start getting notifications of the upcoming meetings, any new data that we put out for you to review, any surveys, questions we ask. So really, to be engaged, we really want as many of you as possible signed up for this service. So once you're signed up, you can go and visit the news by neighborhoods, and you can read information that's specific to your neighborhoods and the maintenance assessment district in your community. So the website's already populated with tons of useful information, from formation details to annual budget information. We have spent over the last year gathering information that would be relevant and useful to you. So the city is working hard to make sure that they're representing your voice and your priorities when making decisions. Through intentional actions, where we collectively as a group can influence policy decisions, but we need your participation to make this happen. So it's one thing to say that you want to be involved, but another thing to show up at the meetings and continue to provide input and responses to the questions that we're asking. So this is an introduction meeting, and it's intended to lay the groundwork for the upcoming community-specific meetings. If you received one of the flyers for tonight's meeting, then your neighborhood is part of phase one. As Alex mentioned, there are some communities within the city that are not part of the phase one ReNew Oxnard program. So there are some maintenance assessment districts that we have not identified as priority at this time to be in this program. Those communities will also have the opportunity to go through this process, but they're not in phase one. So tonight's topics are high level. Each community is a little bit different. So we will dive into details and priorities of each community at the smaller upcoming meetings that I'll discuss later. I'll go over the details of these and explain the ReNew Oxnard program, but that's towards the end of the presentation. So first, I have a few ground rules that I'd like to cover to respect everyone's time and personal viewpoints. We plan to keep this meeting under an hour and a half in case you need to hop off or would like to review some content that was covered in tonight's meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be shared on CivicMic.com. So feel free to go back and watch it over and over. We will hold questions till the end of the presentation or end of all the presentations. And if you have questions, write them down. Or if you are online, you can use the chat button to type your question in, but we won't cover those until the end of the presentation. Please save the chat feature for questions and limit conversations back and forth, because it will be hard for us at the end of the presentations to find the individual questions if there's a lot of chatter back and forth. Also, to finish the meeting in a timely manner, we may need to cut the questions short and then address some of them on an individual basis after the meeting concludes. But any questions that are asked through CivicMic.com or the 1-800 number, which is 1-800-676-7516, you can reach Pablo or myself, Danielle, directly. Any questions that you have, we will then share that information on CivicMic.com and our social media sites, because we feel that if you have that question, chances are so do others. So once we get to the question portion of the meeting, I'll go over some acceptable behavior and interaction guidelines. But a meeting this size, we know can quickly be derailed with background noise. So that's why all of you have been placed on mute. Zoom's tried to fix this, but the technology is not there yet. So we want everyone to hear what's being presented. So during the presentations, we'll keep everyone muted. Please respect others and stay on mute so everyone can hear what's being presented. The CivicMic public engagement process aims to gather feedback from various demographics and with a diverse values. So we'd like to hear from all participants. We'll make every attempt to shield you from personal attacks or slander. Anyone using foul language or making personal attacks will be moved to a private meeting room by the moderator to regain your composure. And if the unacceptable behavior continues after you return from the private meeting room, you will be removed from the meeting and not allowed to return. So I don't expect this to happen. Like we said, we've talked to a lot of you, and we don't think that this will happen to anyone, but we just want to be clear that that's the process, and that We ultimately want to hear the opinions of others, and we won't allow others to disrespect you for having a different viewpoint. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and move on to the presentation portion, and Pablo Perez is going to cover the Maintenance Assessment District's history for the City of Oxnard. Pablo?
Thank you, Danielle. Can you please keep an eye on the waiting room for me just to make sure?
Yes.
Thank you. I see some people come in and out, so I just want to make sure they get back in. I want to provide some historical context for the maintenance districts in the City of Oxnard. The city's maintenance districts are part of what we call benefit assessment districts. More specifically, these maintenance assessment districts have been formed under the Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972. Sometimes you may hear us refer to them as landscaping maintenance districts, LMDs. Other times as maintenance assessment districts, which I prefer and I like because when we abbreviate it, we call them MADs, which is pretty cool, I think. Sometimes they can be MAD. But assessment districts are a property tax tool used by local government to fund public improvements, maintenance, and services. What's good about assessment districts is that they are for a specific geographical area that receives a special benefit from specific improvements and services. So in other words, the assessment applies only to those properties who are receiving that benefit, that service, that maintenance, right? Revenues collected from an assessment district are strictly limited to those improvements and services. So I want to repeat that to make sure everybody knows. The city has to maintain separate fund numbers, actual accounting records for these assessment districts from the general fund and any other funds that they may have. So as the charges are collected through the property tax bill, they come to the city and they can be tracked at all times. They can only be used for the purpose of that assessment district. So, and they're all different a little bit. So you can actually always find out where the money came from and where the money went to. In many ways, assessment districts are similar to homeowners associations, right? And California has been using them since the early 1900s. Today's districts at the city, part of this phase one, I believe the oldest one is from 1983 or so. These districts that the city has were all formed by home builders of the various communities throughout Oxnard. And in most cases, the districts took the place of what otherwise would have been a homeowners association. In 1978, however, Proposition 13, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, limited the ability of local government to tax properties based on value. This is what we know as the ad valorem taxes, we all refer to as the 1%. So when you're looking at your property tax bill, I think everybody says, oh, it's a 1%. That's what Proposition 13 did. It limited the ability of government to collect that tax. It is worth noting that the city today, the city of Oxnard, receives only 18 cents for every dollar of the 1% property tax. The schools receive 56 cents, the county gets 20 cents, and other special districts receive 6 cents. So as you can see, the large majority of the 1% property tax that you see in your tax bill is not going to the city. Again, for every dollar, only 18 cents. Proposition 13, however, had much less of an impact on assessment districts. They're not based on value, so they became very popular since 1978, which is why you have so many of them. In those days, assessment districts were very, very flexible. And in particular, when I started in the industry, even in 1992, we could reset the rates to match the budget every year to whatever the budget needed to be. There was no need to have an inflationary factor in the rate. However, in 1996, Proposition 218 came along, and that placed a significant limitation on the use of assessment districts. Particularly, it made it so that increasing the rate, other than having a built-in factor, which most districts didn't, then they require a property owner vote, right? So you just could no longer increase the rate as you could prior to 1996. The large majority of assessment districts formed before 1996 in the state do not have an inflationary factor because they didn't really need it. So they're unable to keep up with the ever-rising cost of labor, materials, and utilities. And that is also the case for 9 of the 15 districts in this phase one. They do not have an inflationary factor. So that means the rate of the assessment districts applicable to these 9 districts cannot exceed the amount that was levied, charged in 1996, the very same amount. Many of the districts have been underfunded for a long time because the cumulative rate of inflation since 1996 is about 66%. And that does not include the excessive increases in the cost of water, right? Water alone will make it so that no assessment district could last forever. This is why the city's districts, many of them, have resulted in a lower level of service, just to try to keep up with the rising costs, because the rates just simply cannot go up, cannot be raised without a property owner vote. Proposition 218 also placed additional burdens of assessment districts, like a stricter application of the separation between special and general benefit. And to be honest and frank, also in the industry, for many years after 1996, we didn't quite understand what these new limitations were all about and how they were going to work. It took several court cases in 2008 and after for us to learn exactly what the limitations were and how they were supposed to work. So we have actually learned quite a bit about assessment districts since 2008. I will say from the period 2008 to 2013, it was a very litigious time in assessment district history. So we learned quite a bit since. In 2014, the city performed an organizational assessment under a plan they called the Determining Our Future Now. That was 2014. This plan identified 128 recommendations for improvement. Assessment districts were on the recommendation number 5 of the 1-year section of the plan. NBS was retained in 2014 to perform a full comprehensive audit of the city's districts. And this resulted in a findings and recommendations report that was presented to the council in October 2015. This audit covered all aspects of the city's assessment districts. That included the staffing and the responsibilities of the staff related to the districts, procedures for the bidding of contracts, inspection of work as it was completed by contractors, and the payment of invoices, procedures and calculation of the annual assessment charges, procedures and calculation of reimbursements to the city for direct, indirect, and overhead charges, assessment district boundaries, assessment district budgets. We also audited the service levels, related costs in comparison to available funds and rates. We also discovered fund deficits and surpluses. It is worth noting that the audit found that the city had been able to maintain high levels of service prior to 2015 for underfunded districts by running those fund balances into the negative. That was for a total of over $2.9 million in the deficit. So this is how the city was able to provide a high level of service, even though many of the districts were frozen in time as of 1996. In essence, they just kept paying for the bills and running that balance into the negative for a total of $2.9 million. In response to the audit, the city implemented a long list of corrections and improvements to the assessment district program. So I'll go through some of those. First of all, there was a full transparency on the findings of this audit. I myself was part of this process. I spent many, many days in the city of Oxnard. In fact, at one point, I thought of moving to the city of Oxnard since I was there all the time. And I met many of you at community meetings, council meetings. We sent many informational flyers. We made all this audit information available and posted lots of information to the city's website and in social media. As a result of the audit, the city created the Special Districts Division that you have today, with staff dedicated to the management of the districts, including project managers and inspectors. The rebidding of all maintenance work and rewriting of contracts with enforceable clauses for non-performance. The creation of a contractor inspection program. The creation of internal procedures for the approval and payment of invoices and other ongoing accounting transfers. The creation of a dedicated website on the city's website pages for the assessment districts, integration with the 311 system to assist with the tracking of projects and resident concerns, the contribution by the general fund of almost $3 million to reconcile those deficits, the district funds with a deficit balance. As a reminder, The city up to that point had been able to maintain those high levels of service by running the fund balances into the negative, but at this audit, we had to wipe that out, which for that we used general fund money and started at zero. The creation of defined service levels, which are posted at the city's website, they're posted at our website with letters A, B, C, D, F, and then resetting every district to whatever service level it could afford based on their rates. So effective 2017-18, there will be no more subsidies being given to the underperforming districts. The removal of the major traffic corridor maintenance, which was being paid from the districts, the creation of procedures and the rewriting of all supporting documents for the calculation and approval of the annual charges, the calculation of the general benefit to identify and provide for an ongoing general fund contribution that happens every year. In other words, the city contributes every year to each district a certain amount for what they call the general benefit part. The calculation of an additional general fund contribution to districts that have what we call a utility cap provision. Not all the districts have this, but some of them in their formation documents had a stipulation that they will pay, the assessment could only cover up to a certain amount of the utility costs. The city's general fund is what contributes to the remainder part. The recalculation and correction of all the assessment charges, the reassignment of utility meters that have been incorrectly matched to districts, the recalculation and correction of several required annual inter-district transfers, the creation and implementation of procedures for the calculation of that direct, indirect, and overhead costs as it applies to each district, the creation of new budget categories for transparency, and the use of surplus funds. Some districts actually had surplus funds for the completion of several improvement capital projects and credits to the annual levies. And I want to say, top of my head, 2017-18, and I had about $1.2 or more million of credits applied to their property tax bill using those surplus funds. Again, every district has their own fund, so not everybody had a surplus, not every district had a deficit. As you can see, the city has done quite a bit since 2014. It has been a lot of work, but today's meeting is merely a continuation of that effort. Of particular interest to me and to all of us that have worked so hard to implement all these findings and corrections is the maintenance of public improvements along the perimeter on parkways and medians for each community is currently funded by the city general fund. So again, I'll repeat that. The maintenance of the improvements on medians, parkways, and perimeters is not paid from the assessment district. It's paid from the city's general fund. We'd like to fix that. We've got to figure out how to capture those improvements. As I have driven through the city of Oxnard, I can see how the medians don't look as good as inside track improvements. We also need to achieve higher levels of service for the maintenance of improvements inside of each community. We have to make changes to the current work list and possibly add needs specific to each community. That's why we want to meet with each community individually. The expansion of the current district boundaries to possibly include other properties that should be contributing but are currently not paying the assessment. Also to provide for ongoing reporting of accounting records and other information to improve transparency and ensure accountability. The creation of a community advisory committee for each community that can work closely with the special districts division to ensure sustainability of these solutions that are going to be achieved through this process. And there are many, many other opportunities for collaboration that I'm looking forward to that will be covered today and in future meetings. Danielle?
Thank you, Pablo, for covering that history. I get to talk about the ReNew Oxnard program. So moving forward from all of that information, mine's a little bit more exciting, I think. This is the mission statement. I think it's important to start off this portion of the presentation by reading this for you, for the people on the phone, because this mission statement was created by the city with CivicMic. And it says, the City of Oxnard wishes to engage constituents in a collaborative governance effort to find and implement solutions for the revitalization and long-term viability of public improvements in and around various neighborhoods in the city, thus protecting real estate values and enhancing the quality of life for its residents. Solutions are expected to include the creation of citizen advisory committees, ongoing monitoring, and adaptive management techniques to ensure the sustainability of desired outcomes and successful implementation of the agreed upon solutions. So this mission statement is very clear in the fact that we want to implement solutions and then put a process in place to make sure that we continue to evaluate how the community is doing, how these solutions are performing, to see if we need to make adjustments. And we need all of you to be part of that process, because at some point, Pablo and I will be removed from the picture and some of you will be running these in conjunction with the city. So I think it's important to first go over the stages of the collaborative governance process and the various efforts to show you what we've done and where we're at now. So the spectrum of collaborative governance includes informing, consulting, engaging, and collaborating. So during the inform phase, leaders meet with representatives of the private sector as well as individual citizens to provide information, sharing information to help alleviate the spread of misinformation and to increase the depth of contribution from community members in the next stage of the process. So knowledge is power, and this phase provides a base for individuals to be able to make informed decisions, but it's really more of a one-way street. So we're sharing information with you and you're digging in and learning. This is where CivicMic.com comes in, the web page for Oxnard. So as I mentioned before, there's lots of information here. The main page shows maps where you can drill down to your community and see the assessment that's on your individual property. You can see the boundaries of your maintenance assessment district. Next slide, Pablo. So this is what it looks like on the CivicMic page, and you can drill down and really just see each maintenance assessment district is outlined. You can search by, your property and see all the details of your property, and the individual pins that are on there when you go to the website would represent anyone who's participated by signing up. So maybe you're participating in the meeting, but you haven't signed up through one of the methods that we've mentioned tonight. Once you do that, then there'll be a pin on your property to show that you're an actively engaged member of the community. Also, the data center, when you scroll down on that main page, when you get there, here you can get information by community, and then you can see what's happening specifically to your community. And then also the data center there on the right-hand side shows service level information, shows inspection reports, citation forms. This section you can see a detailed calendar that shows when maintenance in your community is being performed. If you've there's fact sheets about each district and even items like year-end budget. So there's a lot of information there that if you are going to be a very active member in this process, we encourage you to review and become familiar with. So it's broken down, and the data center shows all of that. Then it's broken down by neighborhood to show you what's spent year over year, to show budgets for each district. And, I mentioned before, we've spent over a year gathering content to place on this webpage for all of you. And before the next meeting, the smaller community meetings, we really encourage you to become familiar with it, with everything that's on there. Well, maybe not everything, but a good portion of it, to put effort forth to understand some of the content there. So that's the informing phase. The next phase in the collaborative governance process is consulting. So this is when we make efforts to gain feedback, advice, or input from stakeholders, and it can be done one time or ongoing. So we can use this to identify data needs and policy options, but for the ReNew Oxnard program, we want to continuously seek and gather feedback from you. at the beginning stages of the program, when we were developing the ReNew Oxnard program, we sent out a postcard that was on one of the first slides there. And the postcard announced a survey, and I'd like to go over some of those survey results with you. So the first one we have here asked if you are aware of the property tax bills, if you are aware that your property tax bill includes a charge for maintenance assessment districts. We have a really good response here. 81% of you said yes. I'm concerned with the 19% that didn't know. So if you're one of those 19%, I'd like to talk to you. I'd like you to look further on CivicMic.com because we want you to be aware of this. The next question is, are you aware of the boundaries of your district and what landscaping is included? We have almost a split here, but from talking to many of you on the phone, I know that there is a misconception, and Pablo mentioned this, that some of the medians and maintenance leading into your communities are no longer within the maintenance assessment district. So while some people answered yes here, I do think that's a common misconception. The next slide says, how do you believe the city uses revenue collected? And we have 34% there that says for maintenance throughout the city, not specific to my neighborhood. That, if that ever happened, that is not something that is happening now. So the city is very transparent, showing budget information, and we want to continue to build that program so you can see where funds are being spent, because the only place that maintenance assessment funds can be spent is within the boundaries of your district. So also we have 31% answered for general services. No, that is not how these funds can be spent. So they can only be spent on services that relate to your maintenance assessment district. And then finally, the last question is, are you satisfied with the level of landscaping maintenance provided to your neighborhood by the city? 96% said no. So that is why we are here tonight. This is how we got to this program, because the city understands that's not an acceptable response, and we agree that something needs to change. So we're here to explore options, to figure out solutions to make that change. And then the next question asks, how should the city address the level of maintenance for your district? And 75% of you said that you don't have enough information, so you'd like to learn more about the options before you make a decision. That is part of the informing process. That's why we've shared so much information out on CivicMic.com, and we will continue to share information, because you are absolutely correct. You need to have enough history and education on how these districts are run and how their funds are being used before you can decide what solutions to put in place for the downfalls you see within the community. So the ReNew Oxnard program is specifically designed to provide you with information so you can help the city to make a decision on the next steps for your neighborhood. We asked some other questions in the survey about communication methods and meeting times. Some of that, because of COVID, here we are doing virtual meetings, but we use the meeting time information to help plan this meeting. So the goal is to take your feedback and use it to make decisions. Moving to the engage portion of the collaborative governance process, the objective here is to actively engage citizens. So what we're doing tonight, when we ask questions or allow questions at the end, and proposing solutions for difficult problems, choosing priorities, and providing feedback. The engage process doesn't typically share in the decision-making power with the city, and that happens at the collaborative process. So that's where the ReNew Oxnard program wants to get you. The ReNew Oxnard program is geared to move your community into a position where you do often share in the decision-making process. But first, we need to make sure that your community is ready, and that can be determined based on engagement and participation. So again, sign up to receive information. Make sure that when we send out the flyer about the community meeting, that you attend, that you ask questions, submit questions early, call us. Just really be in contact to ask anything that you don't understand so we can share that with the group. So we must have a large group of you committed to finding common priorities so we can move to the collaboration stage. Following this meeting, like I said, we'll be sending out a survey, and we want to understand your desires or perceived needs for participation in this program and the collaborative governance process. In an effort to save your time and resources, we only want to move to collaboration with communities that are able to commit to working together with the city to find solutions. And when I say find solutions, again, I'm not saying raise taxes or increase your assessment. There's many avenues to improve your community. To determine which communities desire to truly collaborate, the survey will include questions like those on the screen there. What are the issues from your perspective? Are they negotiable? Are these issues priority to you? Do you believe you have something to gain by participating with the city, or something to lose by not participating? In your opinion, who from the neighborhood needs to be included and involved in this to make it successful? And do you have enough time to participate? So like I said, we don't want to waste your time and effort. If we have a small community meeting, or we send out the survey and it's not well received for your community, then there may only be one meeting if your community is not ready to move forward and work with the city on this process. So I'm thinking that most of you will continue to be on board with this process, and we'll have a good turnout for each of the community meetings. And with that, then we can move to the collaboration portion. And that's the fun part. That's where we are excited to be at with all of you and the city. So participations in the collaborative process may include city staff, council members, residents, property owners, different community groups, consultants for technical support, and the participants make up your neighborhood committees that will be formed. Decision-making in this part of the process will operate by consensus. We will cover how consensus agreements are reached when we kick off our smaller community meetings, but ultimately members should not block or withhold consensus unless you have serious reservations about the solution that's being proposed. So again, we need individuals who want to be part of this process to be open-minded, take the history that they have with the city, learn from it, and be on board with moving forward. So the city is committed to the collaborative efforts. The city seeks consensus recommendations from community members and will share the responsibility in the decision-making and process and implementation. So the city will accept final agreements made in the collaborative process and is committed along with the participants to implementation stage. So that's really important. It's not, the city has already committed that once we bring solutions that are feasible and everyone has come to a consensus on, that they will move to the implementation phase. So again, in no way is this program meant to raise taxes. The program is intended to find ways to improve services in the community. And actually, there's no authority to raise the assessment without your approval. So remember, when the collaboration process seeks consensus recommendations from the public. So I think it's important for us to cover some of the core principles of the collaborative governance process. And you can see those on the screen there. So co-produce public goods. What this means is, I'm going to try and give a really generic example to kind of just walk through some of these, but co-producing public goods is when there's a synergy between government, what the government does, and what citizens do. So an example could be like a cleanup day for the neighborhood. So the city would organize the event, provide tools, and then pick up the trash bags at the end of the day. But the community would be responsible for doing the labor and taking the time out of their day. And then mobilizing community assets. So kind of just sticking on that same idea, even though this is, one of many, many ideas or solutions that we can use to improve your community. But Mobilizing community assets would be, does anyone in the community have a truck that we can use? So as individuals are cleaning up and we have bags full, we can place them in the truck and move them to one location for the city to pick up. Also sharing professional expertise. Maybe there's a community member that's an arborist or specializes in shrub maintenance and can lead a class prior to a community cleanup day, or possibly complete inventory of the neighborhood trees to make sure none of them have disease that can spread to other trees in the community. So these are the kind of ideas that we're looking for out of the ReNew Oxnard program. We're looking for out-of-the-box solutions. We want to enable public deliberation. I think that, and some of you may end up leading this, I think that this is done by directly engaging each of you in public reasoning. So this helps you to appreciate varied interests and perspectives, and also to make hard decisions about costs and trade-offs. So creating higher levels of acceptability to the decisions. I think this speaks to my personality. If you want my support, then I need to be part of the process. Don't tell me that you've made a decision and what the best outcome is, but include me in that process. So think budget meetings where maybe a good portion of the community wants one service to be increased, but in order for that to happen, another service needs to be decreased. So we want you involved in that type of conversation on a consistent basis. And then promoting sustainable partnerships, that's, where we work to collaborate between stakeholders, citizens, including even some of those who have histories of conflict in the past. And these meetings must be deliberate and take place often. So it has to be a sustainable partnership that continues. Building field and governance networks. This would be something like the city bringing various departments together to help your community reach their goals. Also including leveraging of funds, say for grant funds, if there's a, give take library that you'd like to build in your community, something like that. Bringing these ideas to the city and then them helping you with some of their networks that they have available to get these solutions put in place. And then transforming the institutional cultures. This is what the city's doing. They're working to get citizens engaged at a level where you become a partner in the city's process. So through the ReNew Oxnard program, the city is committed to sharing the decision-making process, the decision-making responsibilities with the community, but we also have to have ensured shared accountability. So this process requires the city and citizens in your community to commit time and resources to support this process. So no matter what the outcome, I mentioned before, it's imperative that the community stays involved through some form of citizen advisory committee, which would be a group of stakeholders in your community appointed to provide comments and advice on projects and issues. There must be some form of ongoing monitoring of the program that uses adaptive management techniques to update and change solutions over time, because we want the program to continue as a success. So we don't want to put solutions in place and then walk away. And then come back here again in 5 years and do it all over again. So this is a very important portion of the program. The next steps from here are really the most important and the most fun. It's when we get to start talking with each community. We will group, well, we have already grouped neighborhoods into community teams. These teams were created because we saw some value, economies of scale by combining the areas. You can see these on the CivicMic page. They're outlined there in red. But once we learn about priorities within the community, these may change. These may change prior to even having the first community meeting, but they may change after the first community meeting as well, once we identify common goals, and that's okay. That's this is just a starting point. The community team specific surveys we'll send out to find out what your interests are. And if you're interested in being a part of the solution for your community, please make sure to participate in these. We need to know what your priorities are. And I'm going to share a little story in a minute, but we can kind of guess and we know some of the high level priorities, but we really need to know specifically from each of you, not just from the more vocal members of your community. And then after the survey goes out, we will have the community team specific meetings. So the community meetings where we'll set the date for these, we'll send out a notification on civicmic.com for any of you that are signed up to the listserv, and then we will also mail out a postcard to each community to let you know when that meeting will take place. So your participation is so vital. I don't know, I'm sure you guys feel like I've said that enough, but it is very important. And before we move to questions, I want to share a story with you. Like I said, I love this story and it really helps to explain why your participation is so important. I do believe that the current city staff has the best interest of the community in mind, and they are working hard to move the city in the right direction. So this story kind of just shows when there's a lack of understanding the priorities, how that can lead to the wrong decision. So some of you may have heard it. It's called the orange story. And what it is there's two chefs cooking in a kitchen, and one says, I need an orange for my cake. The other one says, I need an orange for my sauce. So there's a problem. There's only one orange left in the kitchen and two prominent chefs who are fighting over it. So to prepare dinner. So the boss, think of like the city, acting to try and please as many people as possible, comes in and says, I have a solution, cut it in half, right? So then the one chef looks and says, well, I need to squeeze the juice from the orange into my sauce. It's not quite enough, but I guess it'll have to do. And then the other chef needs to peel the orange and incorporate that into her dough for a famous cake. And she says, well, I mean, I guess it's better than nothing. So the better solution, which is now obvious, I think, to everyone, is that both chefs would have had better off if they had peeled the orange for one and give the juice to the other. But instead, the chefs had focused on their positions and what they needed rather than on their interests and why they needed it. So this is why we need to hear from you. We need you involved because the city can act in your best interest and try and make the best decisions for you. But if they don't know the details of what is your priority for your community, then they're limited by that. So I'd like to thank you guys for being here tonight. We want to answer as many questions as we can about the program. Acceptable behavior and interactions for the chat is, before we start, I just want to tell you, please only submit your question to the chat once. So we'll see it. If no need to resubmit it. Express your own views rather than speaking for others. Listen carefully and remain open-minded. Do not make personal attacks, and also stay on track and try and avoid grandstanding. I know a lot of you have a long history with the city and a lot of information to share, and you'll have that opportunity in the smaller group meetings as well as some tonight, but we really want to try and stay focused on questions about how to move forward. I think that would be the best use of everyone's time. So with that, we'll go ahead and start answering some of the questions in the chat. Sorry, I tried to talk as fast as I could to get through all of that. So
Very good. Can you all hear me? Is it good?
yes.
All right. So far I have, so I'm Douglas Portello. Is Oxnard attempting to replace the LMDs with CFDs? So I can address that. That is an option. Okay. So frankly, a CFD has a more flexible list of improvements and services, meaning when you work with an assessment district like the LMD is very limited. For example, I met with the residents of Pacific Cove about a year and a half ago now at a home, and they were sharing how they would like to have the street taken care of, speed bumps put there, street signs, they wanted a stop sign and so on. There are many of these things that you cannot do with the LMD. In fact, to do that, you will have to form another assessment district, what is called a 1982 Act, a benefit assessment district, a different type, that handles street signs, speed bumps, and things like that. So you really can mix and match, meaning you cannot just use a regular single act under the assessment district law to address many of the needs of most communities. So that's why a CFD, also known as a community facilities district is very useful. Now, a CFD requires a 2/3 approval of a registered vote. Okay, so that's very important to know. The ballots go out to the registered voters within the district. So we determine the same way an area that is receiving the services, and the registered voters inside of that boundary are going to receive the ballots. Okay, not the property owners. Again, in a CFD, the registered voters, so whoever is registered within the boundaries of this proposed CFD, this is a hypothetical, they will get the ballots, and the ballots are returned. We count the ballots. One ballot is one vote, and it needs 2/3 yes in order to pass. It's an uphill battle. It's very, very difficult to pass a CFD. That is an option, and it may work for some of the communities. It may not work for all of them, right? So it depends on what the improvements are, right? And what you're trying to capture and what you're trying to do. For other communities, they may rather they may want to make changes to the current improvements or the service level or do different things. So the answer to that is maybe, and I hope that I cover that in enough detail to provide some perspective.
He was the captain of our base, this guy.
I'm sorry? And that's the only question that I have in the chat room right now, Danielle.
May I ask something of you?
Sure.
Hello? Can you not use acronyms when you're describing something, because you were halfway through the conversation before you defined what a CFD was?
Thank you. That's a good point. I appreciate that. Danielle, do you want to do the just on the phone and people that may want to speak, since I don't have a lot in the chat?
Okay, so there was another question about an LMD, but I think you covered that. That was directly to me. And then there was a question about, is there a map of phase 1 areas? The individual districts are on civicmic.com on that main page there. So, okay, so we can move into the phone questions, and how we're going to do that is if you have a question, we ask that only one person speaks at a time and no one interrupts them. So just go ahead and say your last name out, and whichever one I hear first, I'll call on that person to go ahead and provide their question. So if you're on the phone and you need to unmute yourself, it's *6. Or if you are even on the screen and you would rather just talk instead of chat, that's okay as well. Do we have any phone questions?
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, Martinez.
Okay, go ahead.
I live in Pacific Cove, and I just recently started looking into our my taxes, and I realized that from last year to this year, you almost doubled my assessment on that area. And then I started asking questions, and I realized that the area that my assessment covers is only a sliver of land, not the Saviors and Bonini area, green area. And I called, and I was very upset because we've been paying, thousands of dollars for 20 years. And I didn't realize it was only for a sliver of land, the opening of Irwin, Connor, and the green area, the little tree. Again, I was notified that, yes, we have a lot of overhead right now with our assessment, a lot of overhead for what they do. They're really very little. And you were trying to get other areas to join the district, which is probably not going to happen. So what solution do you have for us?
So, Martinez, I believe we spoke on the phone. This is the type of engagement and conversation that will happen with each individual community, because I frankly don't have a out-of-the-box solution for you right now. That's the whole purpose of this engagement, right? I want to sit down with you, all of your neighbors, and collectively figure out what works best for all of you depending on your needs. So I frankly don't have an answer today, and it's sort of the point of engaging you individually, right?
Another quick question. For this year, we're paying $10,000 out of our assessment for these meetings. Is that a yes or no?
So what's happening on these meetings, and Danielle covered a little bit of this, the city did budget from the budgets allocated a certain amount to each of the districts in this phase one, which is 15 districts, right? We're only going to bill, Danielle and I only bill for what we incur. So like Danielle said, if we go sit down with Pacific Cove, just to use it as an example, and we give very low participation, maybe we try our best and maybe have 1 or 2 meetings, we're only going to bill for those 1 or 2 meetings. And in fact, we're going to try, if we were doing this on site, we will actually travel to Oxnard. This is how I did it before, and do 8 meetings in 1 day or 2 days, right? Just as many as I could to save on travel costs. If the community is not interested in pursuing any solutions or working together because there's not enough participation, we end that engagement. We just stop billing and say, okay, Pacific Cove, we're going to come back to you a year from now. We'll work on somebody else. So though the amount in the budget, there's an amount allocated for there, that is essentially the maximum amount that we're going to bill for to this engagement for that particular district. It is no guarantee that we will actually bill it, right? Hope that answers your question.
Okay, well, that's what you mentioned about giving the people in the assessment district more information. And I had to actually call and start figuring out what's going on when I saw my taxes double in less than a year. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people in this call are aware, or if they're not, they should be aware. The level of service that we get is very, very, very minimal for what we're paying. Very minimal. It's only like less than, I don't know, square feet. It's not a lot.
Right.
And a lot of people probably think that Satyrs and Fort Hueneme are being covered by our assessment, and it's not. Can you explain that to everyone?
We will. So let's do that at our individual meeting, and we'll answer some more of these questions on the chat, because this is the kind of stuff that we have to work with you individually, right? So Danielle, you want to?
Correct. Okay. Do you want, is there another phone member who would like to ask a question?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay,
This is
so
Naomi?
yeah, this is Noemi. I also live in Pacific Cove, and I brought up a complaint one time regarding the current service, landscape maintenance service we have, that sometimes they don't come, and I would call and sometimes, not get a response. I mean, to be fair, I do get response sometimes, but sometimes I don't when I call and follow up. And then I always get told that they did come. I mean, I live in the area, I'm right across to where they're supposed to service, and I call and, complain about it, like inform them that they didn't come they're supposed to be here every 2 weeks, and I don't see them. And so I get, no response, or getting ignored or pushed aside for, my concern, this is, we're paying for this. I know, and it's a lot. And to be like ignored, whenever we place concern. And then recently now, I think, I'm not sure if we are being retaliated upon, because our front area now, all the plants there were removed. I don't know why would somebody do that, because I raised concern and questions and complain about the services that we get. Now we're being punished. I don't know what's going on. Like, I need to know that someone's going to be professional when I call on the other line, and who's going to be receptive, of our concerns, because it's not right. The fees went up. I wasn't even informed that the rates is going to double. It's almost doubled. And then when I called to, report to you guys that this was not done, we get ignored, or now our area is damaged, is being vandalized. And how is this going to improve the aesthetics of our neighborhood if when we go in, like, the plants are not there anymore, or our sign, our monuments are being vandalized? How does that look good for our neighborhood?
Right. So these are the exact type of questions that we want to talk about in your community meetings. So just in your small community meetings. So for example, maybe a solution would be something that some of the community members can team with the city to report after maintenance is supposed to occur, to report back to the city following the schedule with pictures and commentary on what the maintenance looks like. So the city doesn't have the staff available to go and follow behind every individual contractor and check their work right as it's being done, but you may have someone in your community that can assist with that. So that's just an idea of some of the things that we can address. And vandalism within the city, you know, there's different programs as far as neighborhood watch programs. So we can brainstorm with a lot of the priorities and issues that you see within your community and try to come up with ways that we can work with the city to find solutions for those. So don't give up just yet. Let's make sure that you are participating in these upcoming meetings, because it sounds like you're very aware of what's going on in your community, and that's the exact type of person that we need at these meetings. And
I mean, yeah, I think you guys should really be concerned. If you have 96% on this program that are not happy with the services that's provided, I think that's very concerning. And you know, you should really listen to what the people in the neighborhood that lives in the neighborhood that pays for their services, what they're saying. Because you know, if 96% are not happy, that means they're not being done. The services they're paying for are not being done.
right, and that's exactly why we're here tonight. So thank you for your comment. You hit the nail on the head. Is there another phone call question?
This is Glenn Noreen.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Glenn.
Okay, I'm with the California Lighthouse community. I actually would like to thank you for putting together the program. I've looked at the materials, I looked at the budget, and I have a better understanding now why the services, I'm one of the part of the 96% who are not happy with the services. If I look at the budget and see why that's the case, there just is not that much money to provide adequate services. And I appreciate your suggestion of coming up with creative approaches to solving this. So I basically suggest to people, look at the material, look at the budgets. I think that you've done an outstanding job of putting all the materials together. So I'd like to thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to moving through the process with you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm glad that you are on board, and we're happy to work with you and hear from you and get insight from you. So thank you for that.
We have some chat questions if you want to do that.
Okay, sure.
So I could actually probably answer the first one here from Ned Branch. I believe that's the next one in queue. Where can I access the audit of the LMD? Where can I access what was promised by the original act creating my LMD? So our CivicMic website under the data center is where you access most of that information. For example, we keep there the annual report that has the engineer's report that shows you what each LMD provides, what kind of improvements are being maintained, the budgets, and all that kind of stuff. The city also has the same information and lots more on the Special Districts Division page. The audit, I can make it available if I don't have it already on my website. The city may already have it up and running, but I will actually make a point of posting that to the data center, which I actually have the file, so that's not an issue at all. Second question here from Douglas Bertello. Will we know the levy cost per property owner in the information? Westport at Mandalay Bay shows levies of $3,000 to $4,700. This seems like a lot to seek in added cost to the owners. So I can really speak to Mandalay Bay. I'm not really prepared to address that number, but yes, the actual engineer's report and the annual report has a listing. It's called the assessment roll, and it shows each property and the levy amount. If you also go to this map, am I still sharing the screen? Can you still see it? Okay, so let's say I was to look for a property in any of these districts. I guess I could do Standard Pacific. In fact, I'm gonna make this a little bigger by just loading it. If you excuse me here a second. You can click on any parcel in any district and actually see the amount. So if we do River Ridge, for example, and I zoom in and I pick this parcel right here, there's a pop-up that comes up. So you find your parcel, has your APN number. This is going to match to the assessment roll that I referred to that is part of the annual report, has your site address. It tells you what district you're in and how much your annual amount is, at least the 2021 amount. Preliminarily, we have this the team names, which are basically the groupings that we're trying to work on. I have to confirm that with the city just to make sure that we drew the lines properly. The city is more familiar with the local situation than we are. So, but preliminarily, we're joining River Ridge with Country Club to work together as a team. But you can pull up any parcel anywhere and find out how much you pay in the assessment district. The next question, Danielle, maybe for you. What is the consultant cost for this ReNew project, ReNew Oxnard project?
So like Pablo mentioned, we are only billing as we engage each community. So it will be different for each community. It will be different if we work with team 3-10 here, and we end up doing 5 community meetings, and we implement solutions, have a citizens advisory committee created, and start reviewing budget numbers for next June when these amounts are placed on the tax roll. That may be different than LMD 13, that we do 1 community meeting and we realize that the community isn't really engaged or ready to move forward. Maybe there are some individuals that want to be engaged, but not enough. So those numbers will just be different depending on each community and how receptive they are to the service. So, but we can share that information as time goes by. If we want to, in your budget numbers, we can share how much has been spent up until a certain period, but it really will be specific to your community and depending on how fast you want to move forward and how involved everyone is. So,
okay. Next question.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I look at this and it's dependent on the citizens' participation, whether their area gets the work done that they're already paying for. I understand you're asking for the public's involvement for their areas, but we're paying for our taxes are paying for a service that is not being done. I've lived in this community 10 years. I have only a handful of times seen anybody working on the 2 little round 20-foot circles in our neighborhood that have to be trimmed every 2 weeks or whatever. And there's been times when I've driven by a few in the neighboring area where we've made a joke that the weeds are, waist high and they haven't been handled in months. So we're looking for the work to be validated or the work to be completed as your contract states, and it's a systemic problem if 96% of the people are complaining. So I just have a hard time that if the community doesn't want to get involved, then the dollars we're spending are not getting put to use as they're supposed to.
And I think that just to clarify that a little bit.
Hold on. Can I follow through? Can I follow through on that because I have to leave the meeting? This is
sure,
Martinez again, Pacific Coast. Yeah, our community, as I just kind of rough draft of numbers, have paid almost $1 million for that sliver of little tree and that sliver of little entrance to our community. Almost nil. And like the ladies have said, it still doesn't look maintained. So why would we engage more and pay more and take other responsibilities when the little tree can't even be taken care of at the entrance of Connor or Hood? Almost $1 million for that community in the last 20 years when it was built.
And that may be where will be the purpose of the meetings for you, right? So in order to replace a district or do anything more with a district, let's say if we were to replace it, you need high participation because you need that 2/3 vote, let's say, right? So to put out something to a vote without participation doesn't make any sense. Now, as we engage each community, I am expecting, as I did last time around, to find places where what you like to do is to address what's there on site, right?
We should have sister counted. we should have Cesar Chavez apartments pay part of it, and we should have the veterans home pay some, because especially Cesar Chavez uses the entrance.
Okay, so to do that, that is an expansion of the boundary that requires a vote. So that's a whole different ballgame, right? But that's why we need to do this with each community, because like you're describing, your needs may be very different than anybody else's. It may be that a community does not want to pursue the replacement of a district, but rather fix what is there. And that means to hold the city accountable for what you're paying for, or to get more information to figure out why is it costing so much or not enough, or what's happening, right? So that indeed is a possibility. So I wouldn't get too wound up about that right now, because that's the kind of stuff that we're going to work with you one-on-one. And again, there are no predetermined solutions here. One of the solutions may well be that we're going to spend the next few months getting you accountability, figure out where you are, and then go from there. Okay, so that definitely is a possibility.
Thank you.
Am I able to speak? Am I able to speak here?
Yes. What's your name, sir?
My name is Douglas Bartello.
Hi, Douglas. I'm going to mute everybody else. Sorry, I'm just trying to find you here. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. I wasn't quite sure how to speak on the phone. I'm sorry. I'm not techie. I've been a resident here for 34 years. And
I did not mute you. Are you okay? Are you still there, Doug? It
looks like we lost his connection. He's froze.
Okay.
Diminishing. And you've
Are you
shared
back?
some facts. Yes. Can you
Sorry,
hear me?
Yes.
Start all over again. We lost you for a second.
Okay. Yeah, it's been going in and out, and I haven't been catching everything everybody's been saying. I'm sorry. But I have noticed that the landscaping has diminished significantly. It's just not been maintained properly. You guys have answered some of those questions in terms of some of the limitations that you've had, and raising due to increased costs and those kinds of things. I understand that, but I've been working the last 3 months as a volunteer to remedy some of the perimeter landscaping in my neighborhood in Cabrillo, because it used to be so beautiful. Patterson was like a picture postcard for Oxnard. I mean, really, people used to put it on a postcard, and now it looks like Sleepy Hollow. It's really bad. I mean, dead bushes, overgrown. It's just horrible. And the city comes in and they cut a tree because somebody complains. It's overgrowing on the wall. It's coming on their property. It's going to damage their pergola. And there was a veteran that actually had a week of going down to the city and saying, hey, look, you got to cut this tree or it's going to damage my property and my pergola. And my understanding is the walls on the perimeter, those are actually the property owners. And then everything on the other side of the wall, toward the street, that's the city's. So I've been getting an understanding of this. But they cut the tree, and then they left all the branches, all the big logs, huge, laying there for months and months and months. And so, I walk my dog like everybody, take walks. And I'm noticing that that's just been left there. And, here, this is one of the nicest neighborhoods. And it's awful, And then I start noticing subtly the decline in the landscaping. So I just got fed up seeing my beautiful neighborhood that we love and we've invested so much in have this decline. So I got my handsaw and my lopper, my branch cutter, and I went out there and started going at those logs. And I put them out on the perimeter. And, there were like 25 yards of them, 4 feet high. And so the park guy came by in his truck and he said, hey, buddy, what are you doing out here? And he said, did that come from your lawn? And I looked at this massive amount. I looked back at him, we both laughed. So that set me off on doing a volunteer effort to improve the landscaping for the perimeter. So I started a GoFundMe page. I started getting active on social media. I started getting volunteers. We had groups of volunteers. I got involved with Marvin Voos, who just won an award for all his efforts for the years of picking up trash and improving landscaping. And so I worked with Marvin, and we went to other areas of Oxnard. And I learned from Marvin because, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I want to work with guys that, and he was doing a great job. He partnered with Public Works. They were picking up the green waste because there's so much of it. The neglect has gone on for so long. And so we're in there, trimming, taking out dead bushes, and we can't handle all of that. So, with Joe Perez and the Public Works, we had a good partnership going. So, like what was suggested by Danielle, they were removing the green waste. We were doing the labor, and it was great. But in that 3-month process, I was also learning that really you can't depend on the city. So, for example, the golfers have taken over. It's like, golfer condominiums, because we got the fields right across the street. That's their grocery store right there. And so, they weren't fixing the sprinklers. And then in budget of 2019, they cut in 2 budget cycles, 26 public works workers. Well, yeah, those were the guys that were coming out and mowing the lawn and, trimming the bushes and doing all that. And so that was what the city cut. So they set a priority not for the landscaping. And now within the neighborhood, they also, we have trees that are city owned. That's on the curbside. And they don't cut the trees. So we call them, we do a 311, we do everything, to try to get them to come. And they contract these guys, these tree cutting services. So they came out and, 13 months later, they came and they cut 5 branches and they left. So, over the years, we just have come to not depend on the city. And we cut our own trees. Well, they're not our trees. They're the city's trees because they're not doing it. And
Doug, can I interrupt you? I'm sorry, but we're running out of time for questions.
Okay.
And you and I have talked, and I know you are doing great things for the city, and I appreciate you. I don't live within the city, and I appreciate you.
I don't appreciate the priorities that the city have set when we, as this other woman has stated, we are paying for these services and we're not getting them. Even when we're community activated groups and doing these things, we're not getting a respectful partnership. These community activated groups in the city of Oxnard, they're meaningless, they're useless. They take our input and they ignore it and they move on and make our budget over 50% for safety. And then landscaping and all these other things that are important to us for our quality of life, they get put on the back burner. Now, this is just my opinion. I feel like the city is moving away from the LMDs and away from their responsibility and putting it in the CFDs. And they want to start assessing all these levies and start making us pay a lot more money for this maintenance that should be in the general fund. This perimeter maintenance, that should not be CFD. Now, as Danielle explained, that's inside the neighborhood. Fine, that's okay. That's part of my property assessment. We pay $22,000 to cut the trees. That makes sense. That's good. And they don't do it though. But the outside, no, that should not be put on our backs and give the city the free ride to go ahead and start increasing their salaries, their benefits, their pensions, and not dealing with the basic public services that they should be responsible. And so this is the history. I mean, I've been lived here 34 years.
And I thank you for that history, but I need to move on to other questions to respect other people's time.
Thank you very much. Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. Doug is going to be at the community meetings. He may even attend community meetings that are not in his area because of his experience with the city and some of the stuff he's done. We may ask him to attend some of those meetings because of the grassroots efforts that he's done. So thank you for your comment, and
thank you very much.
Let's move on to a couple more questions and try and get some answered here. On the chat we have for the community groups, will they be organized by LMD, and will there be city staff assigned? Jerry Cooper, who's on this call, leads the Maintenance Assessment District Division, and she will be involved in all of these meetings. What authority will the team have? The city, has committed to working to collaborate and implement solutions that we find. So that they created the mission statement, they approved it, they are part of this program. This is happening because the city is requesting this. So what is the targeted start date? As soon as we end this meeting, then right after the holidays, early January, we'll have the surveys go out, and we'd like to have meetings starting as soon as January. So community meetings. Talk fast, Pablo. Let's see how many you can answer. We're running out of time.
I thought we need to be aware before rates go up. That is correct. No rates are going up without a vote or notifications, notice, ballot, and meetings. None of that can happen. Where can I access the audit? I think I covered that previously. We're going to make it available. Just go down further down. Does the city categorize contacts from residents to understand what kind of complaints they receive, or is it all from the survey? Not really sure what that actually means, you know? Mike, I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself on Mike Vargo. Can you explain that a little more?
This is Julie Vargo, but yeah, I'm just curious about how the data gets collected. It sounds like a lot of people call in and so forth. Is that all aggregated in terms of this project too, or is it mostly survey data and this project that will inform the go forward complaints?
Okay. So we actually have a Facebook group. We have email. We have the subscription and comments. So basically, you subscribe to our website. You get notified daily of posts and information. You can also comment on the website, survey. We aggregate all that data all together. In fact, every time one of you reaches out to Jerry or the Special Districts Division, she shares that information with us. We collect all that in a big folder called Engaged. So for engagement.
I guess, Pablo, my question is more about like the everyday calls that come in. So the person who calls in the tree and so forth.
That is through 311. Yes.
So where is that data published?
That actually, Jerry, can you unmute yourself? Do you actually publish those stats ever? The 311?
I know that the GIS division does do an update each year on the statistics citywide of 311. We do not specify to special districts per se. I can get a link for the previous year's staff report with regards to 311 and provide it to you guys to post on your website and send.
If you have it on GIS, I can map it. So as long as I can get that,
I think for each of the regions.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Please go ahead and send that, and we'll make it available.
Probably you skipped one that said their community is made up of seniors. How can they participate? They can't participate in cleanup besides raising taxes. What other options are there? This is what we will do at these community meetings. We will talk about priorities first. And once we come to the list of priorities for the entire community, then we'll start working on solutions. And don't worry, you'll be able to be part of the solution. So other than just raising taxes.
Okay, why is my parcel now listed on the LMD roll from the report? There's several streets that are not on the roll. So that, I think that's Doug from you regarding LMD 12. Can you please send me that information, email it to me directly, and I will take a look at it. Where can I find how much we have in our LMD account? If you go to the data center in our website, I recently published the end of fiscal year fund balances, and I'm working with the city currently on making projections for the end of this fiscal year. I should have those projections ready for the individual meetings because I know that's an important part of finding out where we're starting from, right? How much money are we going to have at the end of this fiscal year? So currently, you can find the 6/30/2020 balances in the data center, but we will have better numbers soon for the meetings. Let's see what we have here. Danielle, you see any others that I'm missing here?
There's some listed problems for different communities about the gopher holes and parks. Those are all community specific. Oscar mentioned, holding the city accountable. The city is working on providing as much information as possible to be very transparent, and we want to walk each community through that to show you where the budgets are, what is in each of the budget line items, and how we can drill down with that, what it costs for the maintenance of your community and what other priorities you might have. So we will address that in more detail with each community. Who can we call about complaints? That's the 311. Why are we paying so much to improve our neighborhoods? Aesthetics, but it's not happening. Trash and dead plants everywhere. Same as we get to these community meetings, we'll go through the budget line items. We'll go through the cost of the maintenance, and we'll figure it out together. And we'll be sitting there going through the numbers with you. So, that's what this process is going to look like. That we have to figure out. why you're not having the service level that you want, and then what we want to do to try and get there. Community groups going to happen, will they be online? So yeah, with COVID right now, we're going to have a lot of these community meetings will be just like this. Unfortunately, we can't huddle in someone's house or, you know, at the neighborhood park, because that's just not allowed right now under California restrictions. Hopefully someday, like Pablo said, I have never got to have these cookies and cakes, so I would like that to happen. So, you know, I can partake as well. There's a huge question of trust at the city meeting their part of this obligation. Yeah, we understand that, and the city recognizes that as well. But like I said, and I've had many conversations with many of you on this call, that I can tell you that the city staff that's there now is has the best interest in mind and is trying to move forward. And, you know, we can't hold them to the sins of past staff members. We can just take that information and learn from it and try to move forward. So I'm not asking you to completely forget that, and I'm not saying it's all roses, but I do think that we can't let that limit us from finding new solutions. We need to see change in their priorities before we can buy into the program. Let's get some small wins for these communities, for each of your communities. Let's start the process and look for some improvements that we can do right away, where you can see that the city is on board with this collaboration process. That's all I can ask of you. Let's see, when will the city increase irrigation staff from just one person? Again, we have to just talk about the details of that on the budget level. If it's general fund money, that is a completely different question that would have to be addressed outside of this forum. Can you provide your phone numbers if city LMD do not answer our calls, emails? Yes, CivicMic.com. You can go there. You can submit your questions there. There's a 1-800 number. It's 1-800-676-7516. My email, dwood, so D for Danielle, WOOD, @civicmic.com. Feel free, call me, email me. I've spent many hours on the phone with many of you already. And let's see, if possible, transfer LMD or CFD to an HOA. It's an option. You know, some of you mentioned that that's something you'd like. Others mentioned that there's no way you would support that. So this is where we have to get your community together and come to consensus, because just because one person wants something in the community, you know, the city can't make a decision based on the loudest person in the room. They want to make a decision based on a diverse group of individuals. Why is the perimeter not taken care of through the general fund? Because the city has not had funds in the general fund. And as I think Doug covered, that hasn't been made a priority by the city. So those funds, you know, it's way down the list. I saw someone trying to raise their hand, I think, and we're running out of time, but we started a little bit late, so we can take a couple more questions. Ruth, did you have a question? *6 to unmute. Oh no, you're on the phone.
Oh yeah, I got it. Yeah. So I have a question. I know I've talked to some of you in the past, many times. I'm in the South Bank area over here in District 14, I believe it's called, California Cove. And I just wanted to clarify something. I know I just came in and, well, I didn't just come in, but the CMD, are we here to just make our LMD to a CMD? Is that the purpose of this, or no? Like, there are other options. We don't have to go there, because even what's his name? Pablo said that's really hard to get to change it. So this isn't the purpose, correct? We're still here to, you know, discuss on how to make things different.
You got it. Yes, there's no predestined solution.
Okay.
CFD is one of many, but it is very hard to get 2/3 approval as you could possibly imagine.
Right, that's what you were saying, and I thought, so why are we even wasting our time, you know? But I'm glad that we, but there isn't any more money, so we've been told no and no on watering, but so where's the money going to come from if we've been told no, no, no?
And that's what we have to work on and figure out. And there's a lot more issues here, I think, than money, as it has been my experience working with the city all these years. There's a lot of history, as Doug covered, and things that we need to kind of figure out and overcome to reach that solution that works for everybody, right? So And I love the participation. Nice to see you, Oscar, by the way. So I met many of you, and I know there's a lot of history here, but I'm confident that we can work together and find something that can make it better than it is today.
Great, thank you.
Well, Danielle, I don't think I have anything else here, right?
No, it looks like we don't. And I know we said we would try and respect everyone's time. We didn't want people falling off and not getting to hear the last question. So any additional questions that come up, feel free, email us, call us. And when we get the responses to your questions, we'll put them on CivicMic, which will then give updates to anyone who signed up saying, hey, there's new information out here. Look at this. And, you know, we won't do that for every question. They'll be lumped together. Right. So you won't get an email every night from us saying, oh, there's a new question answered, but we will answer all your questions and put that information out there. We will get the survey out and get moving forward to the community meetings. So
what will happen in the next few days, probably early next week, normally happens after these meetings is we post the meeting to our YouTube channel. So all of this will be there for you. We get all the slides converted and posted into a post. The chat room, everything that is here in the chat will show up in that post. As much information about this meeting as I can release or remember, I will put in that post. You need to subscribe to receive updates like Danielle showed earlier. But if not, you can always go to the website and go to latest news and you'll find it. So we'll release all that information and go from there, as well as when I get the teams finalized, I will release that. We will also release the dates of the upcoming meetings and all that kind of stuff. So.
Okay, we have one final winner. I'm sorry, one more person. I see that I've told that iPad 3. I'm going to ask you to unmute. It looks like you're waving your hand. If you can unmute the bottom left of your screen, there's a microphone. Click on that. You were doing a good job unmuting during the presentation. I kept muting you back. So if you know how to do that, you had someone in there helping you. It's a microphone on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. You might have to hover over it.
There it is. Okay.
There we go.
I have a question. We are LMD 50, Pacific Point. How do we find out how much money we have in our account? I've called several people in the past. I'm on the board with the past year, and nobody sent me a notice of how much money we have in our LMD.
Okay, so Pablo's showing you right there on the screen. You can go to civicmic.com, you can scroll down and it will show these are year-end balances as of June 30 for each of the communities, what was in the fund balance at that time. So visit the website, look for information there.
You can put that together. So once you have that balance, which is what I'm working on, you can actually then go to Oxnard by neighborhood, right? You can filter for where are you at?
Can I find it in the CivicMic data center?
Yes.
Yes. And if you want to call me tomorrow or Pablo, we can walk you through it even to get to there.
What is your number, Danielle?
It's 1-800-676-7516.
Okay.
And then
if you go to Pacific Cove on the news by neighborhood, yeah, you can actually filter and find your budget right here, right?
She is actually LMD 50, Pleasant Valley Senior Housing.
Yeah, Pacific Point. That's how we list it. It's the same one, Pleasant Valley. So once you find the budget, remember that balance was June 30, 2020. Now you can see the use of funds right here. You can see that the general fund is contributing $10,000 and we're using $5,000 from what you had. So you can actually, that's what we're about to do, which is to project what the balance should be. But you can do this with any district. We have currently we have the balances in the data center and we have the budgets out there for you, but we'll make it easier for you soon.
I do have to make one comment. When we had Gophers, the city was right there, right on it. So I do have to compliment. I know the city's been getting a lot of negatives, but this is a positive.
If I can get the city to take care of my very vicious rabbits that keep eating my Christmas lights, that would be great. They're obsessed with them.
But the Gophers, they're good at.
Okay, so that the question here that asks about paying for Pablo and I, and yes, you're right, Naomi. You are paying for us, and no, that does not come from the general fund. General funds are only to be used for the city overall, so it can't be specific to a community. Just like the assessments that are collected for each of your communities can only be used within your community. You know, that's the same idea, just on the opposite side. So no, your individual maintenance assessment districts are paying for this process, and you know, we will. No, we are not working for free. But some of you are definitely on triage, so we need to work efficiently, which is why meetings like this one we did together, an overall meeting, so we could get a lot of this information out to everyone and kind of spread that cost to each of the districts rather than bearing the burden to each individual. And we'll share information amongst communities as we develop programs to help decrease that burden of time and effort as it goes to everyone. So Doug, you can call me. Ruth, any other questions that you guys have? I'm sorry, we have to end the meeting now. I'm not trying to cut you off, but I do want to respect everyone's time. And I know some people just hang on until the last question, and that's not fair to everyone. So this presentation will be placed on CivicMic.com, and you can watch it over and over again. The chat will be in there as well. And please send your questions into us. Give us a call, ask any questions so we can get those answered, and keep an eye out for the survey. And please take the survey, and please do everything you can to attend the community meetings. Okay.